let's get to everyone's topic du jour. It's Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever. Here's Fever head coach Stephanie White, who went off on the WNBA's officiating.
I think it was pretty obvious that stuff was brewing, right? When the officials don't get control of the ball game, when they allow that stuff to happen, and it's been happening all season long. All season long. It's not just this game. It's been happening all season long. This is what happens, right? This is what happens. You've got competitive women who are the best in the world at what they do, right? And when you allow them to play physical and you allow these things to happen, they're going to compete. And they're going to have their teammates' backs. It's exactly what you expect, right, out of fierce competition. So I started talking to the officials in the first quarter, and we knew this was going to happen. You could tell it was going to happen. So they got to get control of it. They got to be better. Every year when we have our league meetings in the fall and in the spring, we say the same thing over and over and over, and nothing has changed. Like, look, their job is hard. You know, the game has changed so much. Players are faster, they're better, they're bigger, they're stronger. You know, they're as good as they've ever been. They're as athletic as they've ever been. The game is fast now. Things are happening quickly. Everybody's getting better except the officials. So we got to find a way to remedy it. I mean, you've heard every coach talk about it, so I don't know what the answer is.
So a lot of good in there, and really smart from Stephanie White, who's a former tremendous player in her own right, in that instead of calling out the Connecticut Sun and making it about them and their overly physical approach and a lot of the pushing and the shoving and whatever, she made it about the officials, which is smart because, you know, everybody hates officials. That's like an easy one. And she's not wrong either, where you got to know when it's why the start of the second half, oftentimes you'll see things get really tight with officiating because they go into the locker room and the officials talk like, hey, we got to clean this stuff up. And there'll be some ridiculous calls early, but it really kind of levels it out. That's quality officiating. But if we get down to it, what's behind it? What's behind it is I think twofold. One, it's the belief that the only way you can play Caitlin Clark is to play her physical. If you allow her too much space, she'll kill you. And two, I think that covers for the fact that there's a lot of jealousy over the attention, the money, the fame that she's received. For her part, Caitlin Clark, they won. Right? He who laughs last always laughs best. She shot a good percentage, had 20 and 6 assists. And, oh, yeah, by the way, when she was in the game, her team was a plus 31. I think all of this signifies that she's trending towards being the best player in the league. That's my real takeaway. Because, believe it or not, again, I'm not saying she's Jordan or will be the Jordan of women's basketball. But a lot of this stuff feels like what Michael Jordan went through. First year, dysfunctional team, unbelievable signs of things to come. But remember, Jordan's first All-Star game, he got froze out by Isaiah Thomas. Why? Jealousy. Okay? They're trying to put him in his place, just like the Team USA basketball last year not selecting her. Why? Put her in her place. Jealousy. Want to make sure she earns it first. Also, she went to a terrible team. They let go of the coach, hired a more competent coach, and surrounded her with better players. And slowly but surely they built. And while he was a player, dudes would, how many times the Pistons knock him on his ass while he was playing. Again, I'm not saying she's Michael Jordan, but there are some parallels to the Michael Jordan effect and things he went through that I think Caitlin Clark is going through. And you don't have to do the Tom Brady where anytime you breathe on her, you throw somebody out of a game, but you do have to protect your primary assets. And she is an absolute asset to this sport. And man, did that get out of control. Yes, Dan Byer.
I think that the comparison to what Jordan went through is spot on. I felt that the Connecticut Sun were the Detroit Pistons of 1987 before Jordan ends up taking over the league a few years later and becomes the enormous superstar that he is. The thing that I thought was interesting last night that I now watch in all of these little scuffles is to see what her teammates do. And I think that the Sophie Cunningham foul at the end of the game was another great sign for the Caitlin Clark fans on how this has kind of evolved from a year ago. And also, if you watch, how certain players still aren't coming to her defense. And that's what I find so intriguing about this is there's been progress made, just like there was with Jordan in '87, but there's no Charles Oakley there right now. Now Sophie Cunningham's like, all right, I'll take that role. So she goes and commits the fouls. But I'm still not sure everybody is all in on the Caitlin Clark thing. I don't know if you guys watch that, but I watch to see what players come to her defense, who tries to challenge the other player. The biggest takeaway I had last night was that Sophie Cunningham was like, okay, I'll be that person. I'll be that person to stick up and be her teammate, because last year there was really none of that.
Yeah, one of my takeaways is how many people out there know who Tina Charles is? I mean, I do. I know, Dan, you do. I'm guessing, Sam, you do as well, right?
Yeah, she's on the Sun. She's been in the league. She's like one of the all-time scorers, greatest scorers in the WNBA, right?
Right. She's a great all-time player. But here's what I believe is part of what's happening. And the Jordan thing is part of it. There's a little Magic Bird as well, but Magic people seem to love Bird. There was a little bit of mix, obviously. I think some of it was because he's white, some of the attention that he got. But Tina Charles is one of the greatest women's basketball players ever. Ever. And I'm not a historian for the women's basketball game, but I know enough to know that Tina Charles is one of the great players ever. She's 36 years old, been doing it since college, been crushing ever since, always averaged double figures. She's a double-double machine. But the average fan, even the WNBA fan, if you say Tina Charles, oh, she's a good player. That era didn't resonate at all. So what happens with so many of these women is they just get jealous. Just like you're hearing people who talk about how we commentate on the league, how we comment on the league, our opinions on the league. Well, you don't know. You just started following the league, whatever. That's how they feel about players. Caitlin Clark's getting all this shine. Tina Charles is like, I was a great player for 15 years and nobody gave a rip. Nobody. And so you're getting their teammates feel that. And it becomes a let's show her who's boss here. It's the weirdest league ever. Ever. Because it used to exist and nobody would talk about so many stuff because nobody cared. You know? It's a league where, because of some people's sexual preference, you'll have players dating other players on or on other teams. It will affect who you keep, who you trade. Your whole mojo of a team can be affected based upon the relationships within the team, within other teams, or sometimes even with coaches or people of management. Like, that's a real thing. And straight versus gay. People don't always get along. That's aside from all the other factors that happen with women. You have some women who are straight and they leave the league to have kids and then come back. That's happened. It's such a different dynamic. But many of their, a lot of these issues are, it's like, or how, the pushing and the shoving and the throwing and punches, it's like the men's game, only it feels like a cartoon version of it because it's even more intense for no apparent reason. No apparent reason. And I think the one thing, I do understand if you're Tina Charles, you're an older player and you feel, you may feel like, hey, the best way to play her is to rough her up. The best way to make sure this team understands that they're not that great is to rough them up. Okay. But also keep in mind that if you ask anybody, and I know people who are in Indianapolis, we can ask, Dockett's just coming on. He came on last week, and he's like, the crowd at those games are all moms and little girls. You got to be really careful now that your league is getting so much promotion and attention that you don't scare away or chase away the most important viewers or attenders in the short and long-term future. Right? It's got to be a summer family, bring your daughter to a sporting event sort of thing. And that stuff looked terrible. It's not that I care if girls fight. I'm not one of those dudes that gets super creepy and into it when women fight. I don't. It's just the league is trying to be something that I'm telling you will chase their fans away. Because whether or not you and I, Dan, or you and I, Sam, or you and I, Jay Stu, like, yeah, let them fight. It's like the men's game. Like, let them actually fight. The fact is that the biggest consumers, the ones that make a change, the ones that are going to make Caitlin Clark a multi-millionaire 10 times over, is little girls and their moms, and they don't want to see that. Yes, Sam.
I will say, though, I think there is still like a roller derby element to the WNBA. There's, the prodding and the scratching. And, I mean, the officiating, like, this goes back to Kelsey Plum like a week or two ago. She had this scratch across her face. She's like, I can't get fouls called. I think that it's not just teams singling out Caitlin Clark and trying to, rough her up. There is a problem with the officiating. Stephanie White was absolutely correct. And I think with more money pouring into the league, these refs either need to be replaced by better refs or they need to undergo training, because she's absolutely right. The quality of play is higher. The speed is increased. They need to do a better job. The officiating is bad. But to your point, though, there's definitely still teams and individual players who are gunning for Caitlin Clark to maybe make it onto SportsCenter. The J.C. Sheldons of the world who played and graduated in the same class from Ohio State as Caitlin Clark did. So, I think that you want to keep some of that roller derby element, but yeah, you want to make it family friendly. You want it to be an ooh and ah and gasping and watching the game, and there should be a little bit of mixing it up there.
I don't think the J.C. Sheldon thing is anything that should go away.
Yeah, no.
I think the Mabry thing is the stuff that stands out. That's what I think. The cheap shot from her coming in, you're always going to have players fighting and going at it, and as you said, they played against each other in college, so there's history there. There could be rivalries there. Stuff like that's going to happen. People do get poked in the eye, but it's the cheap shot and then the response by some afterwards that I think is the part that's concerned.
You're talking about like the hip check, right?
Yes.
That came right after.
Yes.
That stuff is like, it goes back to the Kennedy. I'm sorry, blanking on her last name from
Yeah, she tried to rough her up.
Right at the beginning last year.
There is one other point that I want to make that I didn't previously, and so I apologize to all of you. And this is what Stephanie White is saying is true. Okay? Here's the quiet part out loud. We have female officials in the men's game. I had one last year who I thought was actually really good. Okay? But several of them are not good enough. And here is what's at issue. And I think Stephanie points it out. And she's a former player, and she's a woman, she's a coach. But as a man who played, and I've coached, and this happened to youth level, especially once you get to like 8th grade, and now when you're at the college level, it's a very, very fast, very, very physical game. And if you didn't play it at a level, especially the men's game is at or above the rim, and the physicality is so much greater than anything you've experienced as a female player. And if you didn't play, you got no shot. But most of the women who officiate played on some level. But it's so much more athletic and physical that they're calling plays that they're late, and they don't have great perspective on, and they miss them. And then the other part to it, and this is not what happened last night, but I think what will happen is a lot like, we're just being honest. Men and women are wired differently, right? They're wired differently. Women are, and we can say it's a double standard. We can talk about how unfair it is, but they are judged differently than men are, right? They're judged differently than men are. And because of that, it breeds insecurity. Right? And when you have some of the coaches and a lot of the big name players saying, you stink, you're not any good, constantly, and then you feel it with, we all know that fans all think anytime your team loses, it's the official's fault. They become overreactive and super defensive, and then they screw up the game by calling everything. which is, by the way, the next step in what happens in officiating Caitlin Clark's game. Again, this is not me saying, oh, Gottlieb's saying he's anti-female referee. No, I'm anti any referee who isn't capable of doing their job. Man, woman, I don't care if you're trans. Doesn't matter to me. Just want somebody to officiate the game, or a foul at one end is a foul at the other end. A violation at one end is a violation at the other. But I will tell you from personal experience, I feel like they really struggle, women really struggle, to handle the men's game because of the physicality and plays at the rim, two things that they weren't a part of when they played, and it's a tough adjustment to understand how to officiate it when it's so much more physical, so much more athletic than anything they're used to.